presento Brett DALTON, non molti di voi l'avete sentito nominare ancora. Lui è con Moodle da 2 anni, però è il responsabile per tutti questi cambiamenti che stiamo vedendo nelle ultime 2 edizioni, quindi cambiamenti che renderanno Moodle più intuitivo, alcuni strumenti che erano un po' datati si stanno aggiornando. Lui coordina un team di sviluppatori, ma se voi guardate la presentazione ufficiale scritta da lui, che è stampata a video, che si chiama Educational Team e che per noi in Italia vuol dire tutto, no? Quindi è un team di sviluppatori che si occupa dell'aspetto formativo, che è anche questa una novità che mi piace tantissimo come concetto, ed è tutto quello. Voi l'avete visto in giro, eh? Ok? Voi l'avete visto in giro, è disponibile a parlare con tutti. Vi ricordo solo questo: la sua presentazione l'abbiamo chiesta molto completa, perché verrà quest'anno, non sappiamo se torna, e quindi userà tutti i suoi minuti disponibili, però ci ha concesso domani di fare un'altra ora di domande, condivisione, discussione. Quindi noi raccoglieremo domande. Probabilmente oggi non si riesce a discutere, ma domani abbiamo un'ora intera dedicata alle discussioni. Va bene? Ok, quindi passo.
Good morning. Just while they're sorting that out, Paula has very kindly translated my slides. So if it would be easier for some people, these are the version of slides, but they've been translated to Italian. My slides will be in English because unfortunately I don't speak Italian and it's going to be easier for me to follow my own slides, but we thought this might be better for everyone else. Yep.
Ok? Noi abbiamo tradotto tutte le slide, quindi per chi pensa che sia meglio averle già in italiano, sono disponibili in questi link. Senza i video, perché la presentazione ha tanti video, noi abbiamo fatto le slide senza i video però.
There we go. Apologies for the delay, everyone. So just a very quickly about me. My name is Brett Dalton. I am the head of educational solutions at Moodle HQ. So what that means is I look after 2 development teams and also the Moodle cloud system. I've traveled from Melbourne, Australia, which is where I live. It is almost, so the small red star is where I live. It's almost the exact opposite side of the world. So it was a very long trip to get here, but I'm very, very glad to be here. And thank you so much for your hospitality. Everyone has been amazing since I've been here. I get asked quite frequently, do we have kangaroos? This isn't the park across the road from my house. We have a mob of about 80 that live there. I live only about 40 kilometers from Melbourne, so I'm on the outer suburbs of Melbourne. But yeah, I'm very blessed to have all this very, very close to me. I've worked in educational technology for almost 20 years. So I started at La Trobe University. I worked for a company called Echo 360 that did lecture recordings. I worked for Melbourne University. ReadyTech was a company that did student management systems. And I did work for Canvas for a little while, but we'll just ignore that one. But I've been part of the Moodle community for about 2 years now. So I worked with Moodle when I was at La Trobe University, Moodle 1.9, quite a long time ago. But since I've now been with Moodle HQ for 2 years, and actually it's been one of the most welcoming and one of the most open communities that I've ever been with. And the MoodleMoot Italia is just a great example of that. Everyone has been so welcoming, so sharing, and I think it's one of the best things in the world to be working on an open source system that everyone can contribute to. Moodle is continuing to grow. These are just some numbers from our registration database. So we're at over 150,000 registered sites. And to give you, there is that 2 billion enrollments, and it's just 400 million users worldwide. These are the users we know about. There's also probably 2 or 3 times that of institutions that are not registered that are using Moodle. So it gives you an idea of how much an impact this community has on the world. The Italian community has 4,328 registered sites right now. That's about the same number of sites as we see in Russia and Colombia. So countries which are much, much larger. Italy is using Moodle very, very heavily. Speaking to a few people, again, we think there's 2 or 3 times that site's actually out there rather than what are just registered. So you have a very vibrant community and a very involved community, which is really great to see. Moodle HQ's got members all around the world. So as I said, I'm from Melbourne. My team span Barcelona, America, Philippines, but the company overall are based in 23 different countries and at least 26 languages. We know some of our employees and members speak multiple languages as well. So I'm part of the product team. What the product team is, we look after the development as well as technical development as well as the design. But within that, we have got UX designers, we've got researchers, we've got security engineers, QA architects. The area that I look after is educational solutions. So we have the platform team, which is Matt Porritt, who's the head of platform, and they look after the technical backends. And then my teams look after all the student-facing items such as courses, the activities, quizzes, all that sort of thing. And as you can see, we're more than just the Moodle product now, because there's Moodle Workplace, we've got the MoodleNet, we've got Moodle Apps, which is the mobile app, and we've also now got some services. So we've got services in Moodle US and Moodle India, Moodle Cloud, which is another one of my teams, which services just a very small clients. And then we've got the Academy, which provides training to our users. So I want to go through 3 things mostly today. One will be the 4.5 overview, so the new things that have come out in the release that happened on Tuesday, and an update on our AI subsystem, and then some of the things that we're working on for Moodle 5.0 and beyond. So the last release was on October 7th. There was over 260 new features and improvements. About almost 50% of that was actually community contributions. So the community, again, is still very heavily involved in Moodle and development and actually contributions. And we see a lot of that from our partners. Our partners do a lot of that work, and so do the universities. So we're very grateful that we can all push this platform forward together. So one of the things that one of my teams was working on was the course subsections. We're introducing sections into Moodle that now allow you to have a section and then within that a subsection. So another layer of differentiation and for your students. Those subsections will then also allow you to organize your course content much more easily. So now, as you can see from the video, we're adding some content into there, we're dragging it into the subsection, and then that entire subsection as a whole can be moved around within a section or between sections. And this is something that people have been asking for quite a while. As part of those changes to actually improve that usability for students, we've added new navigation options. So the subsections will appear in the navigation, and they'll be reflected again, so people can see that in the side navigation as well. The third part of the subsections will be the single view. So now when you click onto a subsection title, it will take you to a separate page that only has content for that subsection or for that section. This is a real change that we're trying to make for both accessibility reasons and also just so students can concentrate on just the content that they need to see in front of them. So this will allow students to move more easily through courses, to be able to focus more easily and break down that very long scroll into smaller, more digestible chunks for them. So I hope that this is a change that people will embrace and will start using. And it's part of the default theme and part of the default course formats now. Assignments. So my other team, my team based in Perth, the Alpha team, has been working on assignment improvements. So this is the first stage of improvements we want to do for assignments. So what we've done in the first instance is we've made some really big changes to the assignment submissions page, because that is where a lot of our teachers spend most of their time. We've now put sticky headers and sticky footers. So when you're scrolling through the table, you know exactly what you're looking at. You don't have to be going up and down to try to manage that content. We've also cleaned up a lot of the navigation, put the ability to grant extensions directly within the table. This is just the first step. What we're working on right now within there, so we've got the submission filters as well, which we've now added at the top. And that's going to, again, these filters were at the bottom of the page, they're at the side, they're all over the place. So this is now going to make that navigation much more easier for our instructors. This is just the first step that we're working on. This is what we've delivered for this release. We've also improved some of the grading functionality. So we've added some modern style action menus to improve the grading and make that quicker and easier as well. And we've added some new functionality in granting new attempts. So we've now added this new automatically grant new attempt. Previously, you could grant a new attempt until the student passed, but we did some research with our users and we found that one of the really common use cases, particularly for primary schools and even in universities, they wanted students to be able to submit their work, get feedback, and then continue to submit that work. So even if they got a passing grade, this now gives the student the ability to continue to submit until the closing date to improve their grade. So this is more of a continuous feedback model, and it actually makes it a lot easier. Previously, the instructor would have to go and manually add a new attempt to every single student who had submitted. Now they can just set this option, and that's now the default option as well. We really want to help people take that load off the instructors as they move through this work. So we've had a lot of other changes as well. This is one that came from the platform team. We've now got within the editor the ability to do screen recordings. So you can directly do a presentation like this and screen record within the Tiny MC editor. Within that as well, we've also added the ability to pause and resume. So pausing and resuming allows you to start a recording, stop it, go take a phone call, go take a break, and come back and continue the recording, rather than having to do 5 or 6 or 7 takes and be stuck there until you're done. This was also a community contribution. So we're very thankful to our community for actually providing this functionality for us and for the wider community. We've made some improvements to badges. So this is my team in Barcelona, the team that calls themselves Moppies, which is, I still do not understand where that name comes from. So badges one of the most highly voted requests we had was to allow badges to have the same name. So they used to have a unique name across the entire system, and that caused a lot of problems for people managing badges. We've also added the ability to copy badges between courses. Previously, you had to take the student data as well. We've removed that requirement. So now if you create a badge in one course, you can just copy it to another course without any problems. And the third change we've done is to improve the workflow. So we've consolidated some pages to actually make it easier and faster to manage those badges themselves. There's more for this to come. So this is just the first step. Most of the work we're doing here is cleanup work. And I'll talk about what we're doing next further in the presentation. We've done some work around cohorts. So cohorts are very heavily used. They're a way of managing your students within a course. So now we've improved the way that you can do for site level administration. So now you can bulk delete cohorts, and they've got much improved filters. So this should help our administrators, help with the enrollments, and help with the course management. So you can see that we've done a lot of improvements in a lot of different areas here, but there's still more. So notifications, there has been a very large project ongoing for quite some time here around notifications. So notifications are an area that we really want to improve for our students. So improve your ability to communicate with your students and improve the ability for students to know what's going on within the LMS without having to come and log in. So we've now added notifications for assignments overdue by 7 days. Assignment due in 7 days, overdue, an upcoming quiz, so they know that their quiz will be open within a few days. And this builds on the changes that we've already done in Moodle LMS 4.4. So this, again, will be an ongoing piece of work. We're going to be adding more notifications over time. And this is something that we really feel that we can improve that communication with students and make it easier for them to manage their studies and take the load off instructors being constantly asked, oh, when is this due? When do I have to open this? When do I need to go and do this piece of work? So hopefully this will continue, this will continue to grow. And this came out of a large piece of research that our teams conducted for over about a 3-month period, where they went out and interviewed students. They went out and interviewed instructors. They talked to different institutions, and these were the top things that came up that people wanted to know about. There is a long list more, and we'll continue to add more as we go. On the more technical side of things, so these are all student-facing and teacher-facing improvements. For our techs in the room, we've also implemented cache management. So full session management within our caching systems. So now the session management doesn't touch the database. This doesn't sound like it's necessarily a big thing, but it's actually a really big improvement, as it's going to allow systems to scale bigger without needing more resources. This particular project was actually sponsored by the MUA, so the Moodle Users Association. They proposed the project. We worked with them to work through the statement of work, and then we co-funded the project. So they gave us some funding, and we contributed our resources and some of our funding on top of that. In addition, some of the work was actually done by our community and our partners who also contributed to this. So this is a really good example of how, as a community, we are improving the system for all, and it's improving the system for particularly our large institutions in this case. It's actually one of the first projects that we've worked very closely with multiple organizations and multiple parts of the community to actually deliver this. So I think this is one that we've been very fortunate to get across the line so quickly and at such a high quality. And there's more. So there's a lot more that's been going on over the last 6 months. So we've got improvements to quizzes and questions. Now there's a lot of that work has been done by Tim Hunt and Luca Bosch and his teams. We've been partnering with them. So they are doing the development, but we've been providing UX resources to review their work early on. We are engaging with them to make sure their code reviews are happening early, and we really want to support this work. So they've now they've contributed some improvements to particularly around the question bank management. There is now going to be some big improvements in the next release, which for 5.0, that are going to really change the way that we work with question banks. There's been multiple security improvements. So that's something that we always keep very top of mind. We want to make sure our systems are secure. We want to make sure your students' data is secure. So we've had, I think it was around about 20 or 30 issues that have been closed in the last 6 months. And a large number of those are being merged in this current release. Feedback activities had some improvements. Report Builder has had a number of improvements across the board, including some accessibility issues resolved and some usability issues being improved. And there's been many, many more. So I would strongly recommend, if you get the chance, to read the release notes for Moodle 4.5. Just scanning through them, you'll see the number of improvements, number of changes that we've made. So that is just a very quick overview of the many, many things that we've made improvements in the latest release. And it's really great to see that one of the things that Moodle HQ has worked very strongly on is making sure that we can have consistent releases, predictable releases, and that people have a good idea of what's coming. So I hope this will give you some idea about where we're heading in the future. But what I'd really like to talk about next is so that was some of the things in the last release. But I know that a lot of people are very interested in AI, and what I'd like to spend a little bit of time talking about now is AI and what our approach to AI is and why Moodle has chosen to take that approach, and to give you a little bit of details about how the new AI subsystem, which has been included in Moodle 4.5, will help benefit this community in actually exploring that. So one of the things we need to think about is, and we do this with all the functionality that we've produced and everything that we've sent through, is what is the problem we are trying to solve? So one of the things we see at the moment is a lot of organizations implementing AI because AI is cool. AI is saleable, and it's good for marketing. We really want to take a very considered approach to this and say, what is the problem we're trying to solve? So when we move into this space, there is lots of complications, and we've had several presenters speak about those. There's some risks. There's legislation that needs to be looked at. All of these things are important. So when we go into this, we always start from the point of view, what is the problem we're trying to solve? And when we think about that, we have a product framework that we use. So the QR code links to our product playbook. So that's actually the document that Moodle HQ uses to think about when we're talking about a new piece of functionality within the product. And there's really 3 key areas. Unlocking creativity. So this is allowing your instructors and your administrators and your teachers to be creative, and even the students be creative in the way that they use the system and the way that they present content and the way that they submit their assignments. Facilitating collaboration. So how can instructors work better with each other? How can students work better as a group? And optimizing outcomes. How can we make it easier for administrators to run the system? How can we make it easier for students to get better grades? How can we make it easier for instructors to produce and deliver better content? So they're the three main themes that we think about as we go through this process. There we go. So this is one of my favorite images. It's an image of what people imagined education would have been in, I think it was the 1900 World Fair in Paris. They would feed books in and students would have this information beamed directly into their brains. Now, obviously it wasn't a serious thought, but it's an idea. It gives you the idea that education hasn't really changed that much. But the way that people wish education would change has been a constant for a long, long time. But when we look at educational technology, there's one comes along every 5 years that's going to revolutionize the way that we teach. It was big data. It was on LMSs themselves. We've had trying to think of some other examples, but there's lots of examples of this. Every 5 years, something comes along and it's going to make everything better for all their students. Right now, it's AI. But with any new technology, and I think many of us are old enough to remember when our mobile phones were like that. Everyone had a different charger and everyone had a different connector. And over time, that's converged down to just a few different types of connectors. And now it's almost universal USB-C. We see new technologies like that as well. So right now we're here and everyone's doing something different. Everything connects in a different way. Everything operates slightly differently. There's no standardization. Over time, we're hoping to get over here. And that's one of the things that we're thinking about at Moodle right now, is how can we help drive it to some sort of standardization and make it easier for people to engage with these things. There's also the hype cycle. So the Gartner hype cycle, again, we see this very commonly with lots of different types of technologies. So in this case, we have the new innovation. Everyone gets very, very excited. Everyone has very high expectations, and then when they start to realize the reality, it slows down a bit. It drops into the gutter, and we have the trough, what they call the trough of disillusionment. Everyone's going, "Oh well, it really wasn't that great. It really wasn't worth it. We've invested all this time and money, and we haven't really got anywhere." And eventually, people start learning the technology, understanding it better, and we start actually seeing the gains that we kind of expected at the beginning. Now, they may not be as high as that initial expectation peak, but that's where things tend to go. Now, I think at the moment we're down this end, we're just starting to hit that peak and people are starting to realize AI can't solve every problem and AI isn't the only answer. Now, it's definitely got value and it's definitely got applications and there is definitely things that we want to be able to use it for. But as we all collectively start understanding the technology better and we start becoming more comfortable with it, we're going to slowly move towards this side and actually get some good productivity out of it. So this is, again, we've had some people say, well, why haven't you implemented AI already? We have. We've had many of our community implement AI into Moodle. We have plugins that are currently available, but we still really want to understand what the implications are, what the research is, what the benefits are, and what the risks are. And this is why we take our time to actually taking our time to build a subsystem that allows your institutions to actually implement AI in a safe and controlled and thought out way, rather than saying, hey, here's a tool, this is what it does, and that's all you've got, and have good luck, have fun, which is what some of our competitors have done. And we've seen that in quite a few places. So again, we come back to thinking about what our audience and what our community are. Who is our audience? Who is our community for these tools? So when we think about these things, we think about, our teachers and our students, our administrators, developers, researchers, and hosts. They're our partners who are hosting, institutions that are hosting. We really want to make sure that we're giving them the tools to be able to actually manage these things properly and give them the tools that they can innovate and in the research space as well. So we don't want to have a restricted system that only allows you to do one thing and do it using this AI model, because we don't want to lock in the universities. We need to consider who is going to be responsible for this as well, because ultimately, if we build something, we're responsible for it, even if you are using it. You may not want that. You may not want to use AI in a particular way. You may not want to make it available to your students, but you do want to make it available to your teachers. Now, if HQ is making all these decisions for you, that would not be a great situation. So what we want, again, is to allow not just us, but the community as a whole to think about who are their audience, who are their users, what do their administrators need, and how can they be compliant in their particular part of the world. And as we went through that process, we looked at the broader landscape, and there's a few things we need to think about. So with the privacy legislations, the reporting requirements, the local legislation, so the EU AI legislation, for example, Italy is currently implementing their own legislation. I was reading through some of the draft legislation. Now, I don't know whether that's actually been implemented yet. I think it's still in process, but that's going to be slightly more restrictive than the EU legislation, for example. And then we think about on a more granular level, on a day-to-day use level. So the access controls, what inputs are you actually allowing your models to see? What guardrails are you putting around those tasks that you're allowing AI to help with? And then how do you want to allow models to train off your data? Do you not want to allow models to train off your data? How can we extend the system? How can we make it more scalable? So these are the things that we're thinking about as we're building this AI subsystem. We really want to need to be able to provide contextual information to the AI system, but we want to do that in a safe way and a controlled way as well. So for example, the AI system connects to an instance that's trained on all the data in the LMS. Is that appropriate? We don't want students to be able to ask for answers for tomorrow's quiz, for example. So if I've given my entire LMS and my entire course over to the learning large language model, that data about tomorrow's quiz is in there. So how can we control what data gets fed to the model, what data is available by particular users? So we want to, as I said, we want a consistent, user-friendly way for users to interact with the AI. We want to allow them to continue teaching, but allow them to continue using it for their teaching and learning activities. We want to provide straightforward ways for integration as well. So we're not just thinking about the student and the teacher experience, but we're also thinking about the administrators and the people who need to run the systems, the people who need to pay for the systems. So the university budgets at a large level. So again, we really want to do this. There's a link in the presentation as well to our AI principles and statement about the way that we think about AI, and it's very much tied up with all of these ideas. So this is a diagram, and I'm not going to go through the details of this diagram, but at a high level, this is all the different parts of the system. So over here, we have the AI system, the large language model, LLM, that might be any number of models. So it might be ChatGPT, it might be OpenAI, it might be Llama, or one of the many other models that are out there. So they have their own API interfaces. We want to build plugins that allow you to interface with them. So at that point, we don't care on the Moodle side what model's over there. We know how it's going to interact. We know what we can send and what we can't send it. Within the core components, to finding actions, logging, and reporting. So all the things you need to administer the system. And then on the far end, and I'll go into this a little bit more detail, is what we call placements, as to where it can appear in the UI. And that really comes down, and when you abstract that out of that model and into the way that we think about it at a slightly higher level, there's really the placements. So where does the AI component sit? The actions, what can I do with this component? And the providers. So which large language models that we can connect to the system. So an example of a placement might be, as you can see here, generating image from text. So that would be in the editor, for example. an action. So it might be summarize some text, explain to the student what this means, provide clarifying text. It might be for an instructor or a student to ask a question about a particular piece of content, answer a question. So it might be using the AI to test the answers it might get back from a student. Translate content, which I think is going to become increasingly important. I actually really like the translate content idea. I don't speak Italian, but I was able to understand the plenary from yesterday using Google Translate. I could read the slides. I could get about 50% of the content. It was really, really useful. I actually really enjoyed that presentation. But I think that with a more global society, we have more people who are going to be engaging across national boundaries and engaging across like we are right now. And translation is going to become increasingly important. It's still not perfect. It's still not great in some cases, but it is actually a tool that can be very useful. Image generation and chatbots. So everyone's familiar with both of those. And then with the provider plugins. So at the moment, we're looking at the OpenAI API. So there might be Stable Diffusion, Olama, AWS Bedrock. These are some of the different providers that you might have. And they all have their own particular API interfaces. So now that we have these three things, how do we interact with the system? What can be done with it? And what system is actually providing answers for that? We can really look at, so what's the problem? Again, we come back to what is the problem we're trying to solve. There are probably a couple of questions you might want to answer here, however. So it's like, when are we releasing that functionality? So the initial version of this subsystem is available right now in Moodle 4.5. And then we're going to progressively roll out more placements, more providers, and more flexibility. And when I say we, I mean the community. So this is open for contributions from the community. And we very much expect that we'll see several contributions very, very quickly, because we know that we've only, in the first case, so right now we've implemented the subsystem. We've implemented support for 2 providers. So that's OpenAI API and the Azure platform. Now the OpenAI API is also compatible with several other large language models. So we've actually got more than just the 2. We've got 3 actions, which I'll show you those in action in a second, and 2 different areas within the system that you can place the AI actions. But we expect this to, by the time we get to 5.0, we expect to see a lot of people looking to add to this. And part of my workshop tomorrow is, which I want to actually get some feedback from the community about what are the areas that you're most interested in? What are the next placements that we should spend our resources on building? What are the next models that we should support? So that's one of the reasons why why I'm very much looking forward to the workshop tomorrow. So we can get everyone's opinions here and everyone's involvement here in actually shaping the roadmap for this. So right now, AI summarizing content. So is that, whoops, okay. Sorry, apologies. There we go. That's what I want to do. So summarizing content. So when we have cases where we have a large volume of content here, so the entire course, or it might be a large chunk of text that students have to read through. So we looked at that and we thought about what happens if you have an instructor who essentially wants to say, hey, tomorrow's class has changed, but they like to talk, they like to write, and they send a 7-paragraph notification to all their students. So one of the things we can use is the new AI functionality to summarize that, but without losing the important content. So that's one of the things that we want to be able to do. There we go. So as you can see here, apologies. No, they're just playing. For some reason this video, oh, there we go. So there's a very long pause at the beginning. So we can see here, we're clicking through into a discussion, and we can see the very long post that the instructor has given. And while all the essential information is in there, it's probably got a whole bunch of information that the student doesn't want. So too many words. As you can see here up on the top left is the summarize button. So the student can click on that summarize button. The first time that they use any AI system, they're going to have to agree to the terms and conditions. So this is making them aware of, this is the new AI feature, making them aware that the accuracy may not be 100%. They should check what the results are. And then some privacy information about how the data is processed. They need to agree to that. And once they agree to that, they can get the summarized results. So that's the first thing that we've built. Again, you've got the ability to copy that and regenerate that content. The second thing is AI text generation, and we see this being much more useful for instructors. You may not want to give this functionality to your students, but that is free for the institutions to decide for themselves. So again, here we have a case where we have an instructor needing to generate an introduction to their course. So they can click on in the editor, the AI button. They need to agree to the terms and conditions. Now, you only need to do this the first time. Once they accept that and continue, they can describe what they want the AI to create. So they write a short introduction to the course module for an undergraduate university course on cloud computing. The module is called Service Modules, about AS, PAS, and SAS, and it'll generate the text. And once it comes back with that generated text, you can see here's the text. The teacher can check that text, they can modify that text, they can regenerate it if they need to, and if they're happy with it, they can just click insert and we'll put it straight into the editor for them. So again, we're making sure that the instructor has that human oversight to have that chance to review the content before it's actually put it within the course. And once they're happy with that, they can click save and continue and it's done. And the third action that we've actually already implemented, again, it's another placement within the editor, is to AI generation. So it's via text generation. They get to review and regenerate it. It's capability controlled. So you may have noticed that with all of these, it's capability controlled. That means that you can give certain users permissions to use this and other users not. So you have full control over whether you allow students to use this, whether you allow teachers to use this, whether you allow non-editing teachers to use this, so it allows you to do all of these things. And again, you can see here, we're putting in the text prompt, very much like you'd be used to using if you have used any of the text generation tools. You get a little bit of control about the quality, about the shape, whether you want a landscape or portrait or just a square image. They can generate the results. And once you're happy with the results, again, it's as simple as going, yep, I'm happy with that. I'll click next, and then we'll insert that. Now, it doesn't insert it directly into the editor. It goes back into the image picker first. Now, that's a very important reason we do this, because as you'll see when we click next, you'll notice here in the description, it says generated by AI. So that's actually a very important thing that we make sure we do, is that we use the prompt as the text description for the image, and we make sure it's marked as being generated by AI. That's going to be a requirement for some regions and some areas, but we also think it's actually very important for students and users and instructors to know what's being generated by a human and what's being generated by AI. They're also watermarked, again, to make sure they're identifiable as AI. And then on the admin side, so this is a little bit more esoteric, it's a bit hard to demonstrate, but we've got the ability to manage your placements, manage your providers, have system instructions, so things like guardrails, you can write your own system instructions, and rate limiting. So you might be using a commercial large language model, and you don't want your users just spamming it all the time for everything. So you can rate limit it to control your costs, for example. Or if you're running a private model on your own infrastructure, and it might have limited resources, you may want to put some rate limiting around it. This is actually really important stuff in this area. It's hard to demonstrate and hard to show, but this gets back to what we're talking about, the privacy and the control and the ability for your institutions to actually control what you want to, where you want to use this and what you want to use it for. So you might allow all these tools for instructors, but you never want your students to touch them. Or you might say, well, there's actually value for our students to have access to the image generation and the summarization, but we don't want them using the text generation. So it allows you to use permissions to determine who can use these tools. You can use the settings in the admin to say where these tools appear and when they appear, and which model is being used for which placement. So you might have different models for different things. And again, that's a very important point because it allows you to customize the model for the use case, because not every model is going to be good at every task. And so we really want to make sure that that's the case, is that you have that control. So you may be interested in looking at some more information here. So the tracker where we're actually doing the development we're in our Jira system, and the documentation for the current release is right there. I'll just give everyone a moment to look at that. So the next thing that I want to talk about is the what's coming up in the 5.0 release. And actually not all of this will be in the 5.0 release. Some of this will be starting the 5.0 release and going forward. And click forward. Again, that's a QR code to our roadmap. So that should take you to the roadmap. This is so the next release for Moodle 5.0. And you may notice we've changed the numbering. So just so everyone here is aware, we've moved our numbering scheme. So the next version after long-term support version will be the next major version. So 4.5 was our long-term support version, 5.0 is our next version. And then 4 more releases after that. So 5.4 will be the next long-term support, and then 6.0 will be the version after that. So I think the new numbering scheme is going to give a little bit more understandability to all our users as to what version they're on and when the next LTS is and when the next major version is. So as I said earlier, we're working on the assignment stuff, and that submissions page was the first part. The next thing that we're working on is actually reworking the grader. The grader is a very old piece of technology. It uses some old YUI, so it's a web library that's no longer supported, and we need to take all that out. As part of that work, we're taking the opportunity to rework the grader to make it friendlier for our instructors. Now, these are early designs. These are not finished yet. In fact, we've got 2 different prototypes here. So we've got a drawer type prototype and a stepper type prototype. And we've been doing some user testing on that. So you can actually go and have a look at those prototypes in your own time and see the sort of things and sort of the ideas that we're working on. And we're continuing to gather feedback around that. The global conference in 2 weeks' time, I will be running a workshop with a small number of users to actually go through this work and get further feedback. So this is the second iteration of the designs. And once we get the feedback of the global Moot, we'll get a 3rd iteration, and then we'll start looking into finalizing that design. So this will be starting to be worked on for 5.0. It may or may not make 5.0 because it's a very large piece of work. We might implement pieces of this, and then it'll continue on for a couple of releases after that. But we really think this is something that we can do a lot of work in to actually make it a much better experience for our users. The activity chooser. So we've already made some improvements to the activity chooser, but again, these are some prototypes. These are not finalized designs, but we're looking at actually again improving it. So one of the concepts that our designers have come up with is the one on the right here, which is the idea that we can actually provide some more information to our users about what this activity is, how it might be used. So that's one of the things we're looking at, and grouping them so we don't just open it up and there's this massive wall of icons that's very intimidating, particularly for new users. When they look at it and go, I've got 20 choices, I have no idea what I want. So there's the idea of breaking them into categories to reduce that load so they can actually get a little bit more used to it is something we're doing. And then putting a search, because again, we know that institutions have lots of custom activity types. And so you may end up with a list of, particularly when you start adding LTI tools and plugins in, you may end up with a list of 20 or 30 activities. So that's something we're really excited about. And that's one that we're going to be prioritizing. Again, as I talked about earlier, SMS notifications, the notifications work is going to continue, additional events, and improved UI and UX. So the SMS notifications is actually a very interesting one. We looked at this some time ago, and one of the reasons we want to implement SMS is actually to support particularly countries in Asia and Africa where mobile apps and data are expensive, but frequently SMSs are free. So students can't have a mobile app on their phone. They may not even own a laptop. So it's hard for them to actually access their content or know about this new content. But SMSs allow institutions to do that, and to do that very, very cheaply. So that's something that is going to be worked on for the 5.0 release, additional events in 5.0 and more UX improvements. And that obviously this will continue on after the 5.0. And there's a lot more that we want to be able to do as well. So Bootstrap 5. So some of this is technical stuff. Bootstrap 5, we're currently using Bootstrap 4. My team's been working for the last 2 versions to get us in a place to be able to change over from Bootstrap 4 to Bootstrap 5. That's going to just keep us the tech debt and keep the system modern. We're upgrading to Final Awesome 6, so we're going to introduce new icons, make it look more fresh and more modern. Open Badges 3, so for anyone who uses micro-credentials and badges, the Open Badges 3 standard was ratified probably about 6 months ago now. We need to do a lot of work, so some of the work we've started doing is in preparation for these improvements. And then we'll start implementing the Open Badges 3 standard now. It's a much bigger change from 2.1 to 2, or even from 2 to 1. So this will be a large piece of work. LTI, so anyone who's familiar with the Learning Tools interoperability standard, I have trouble saying that, from OneEdTech, we're migrating that. We've already spent 6 months, and we're going to continue through to the 5.0 release, migrating that from an activity into core. So that again is going to allow us to put placements for LTI tools. So then you'll be able to have LTI tools in the editor, in your course navigation, in the secondary navigation within the course, within the administrative UI as well. So that's going to open up the way that we integrate. It's going to open up the number of tools we can integrate with. It's going to improve the experience for everyone. And lastly, more work on AI. So as I said earlier, what we've delivered in 4.5 is just the first step. And we want the community's involvement, and we want to continue to evolve this to make it a really robust and extensible subsystem to be able to move forward into the future with AI. So I'm almost at the end of my presentation. There's a couple of things that I wanted to make everyone aware of. We really want to get more involvement from everyone. So we have the Experience Lab. If you're interested in doing user testing, or if you've got users who want to get involved in user testing, so when we do early designs, when we do prototypes, sometimes they're just concepts, so it's something we just want to see whether there's interest in. We have the Experience Lab. You can sign up there. Sometimes they have monthly draws to win a voucher for, I think it might be Amazon or something like that. And then you can get involved and actually give us direct feedback on those designs. More broadly, we also, oops, my slides got a little bit whacked out, join the LMS PAG. So the Product Advisory Group is a group that we've started to basically get direct community feedback. So the MUA has been great for giving us feedback for many, many years. We're transitioning some of that processes into the Product Advisory Group. So everyone here is getting a preview of this. So those links go to our Product Vision page and the PAG page. Though they are live now, and you can actually go and sign up if you'd like to become a PAG member. We have meetings about every 6 to 8 weeks. The last meeting we had was actually getting feedback on those designs for the assignment work. So we'd love to get more people from a wider variety of regions actually getting feedback. So at the moment, we've got a lot of people coming from Spain, a lot of people coming from England, a few coming from the US, but we don't have much representation from Italy, for example. We don't have much representation from France. We really want to get more, we want to get a broader voice for the community in there. And it would be really good to see. So these pages aren't launched yet. You guys are getting to see this before they get launched at the Global Moot in 2 weeks' time. So please have a look, have a read, give us feedback, sign up to the PAG. We'd love you to get involved. So that's pretty much the end of my presentation. I'd love to take questions if anyone's got any questions. We weren't sure how much time would be left, so we've set up a Woo Clap here. So if you want to sign in on the Woo Clap, and if you want to type your question rather than ask it, if we don't get time to answer it now, we'll respond. Or if you prefer to type it in Italian rather than try to ask it in English, Paula will translate for me. So thank you very much, everyone.
Can you put that in the first slide? Because many people arrived that are late. Quindi per chi non parla l'inglese, lui ha messo quel link, spero tutti abbiano già collegato, potete fare tutte le domande in italiano oggi, io le traduco stasera così che domani mattina lui risponde a tutti quanti. Questi due link invece che erano all'inizio, siamo andati un po' indietro, poi torniamo a quello là, è per chi non era ancora qua, quando li abbiamo condivisi, sono la presentazione, la traduzione della presentazione in italiano, compresi i commenti. Quindi quando la scaricate, il PPT, ricordate di vedere le note. Quindi abbiamo fatto un lavoro quest'anno un po' meglio degli anni precedenti. If you can go back to the last, yeah? The one that is collecting the questions, ok? Now, questo è invece per collegare tutte le vostre domande adesso, in modo che possiamo preparare, tradurre e far partecipare tutti alla discussione di domani in 2 lingue.